Hey everybody, Jem Schofield of the C47 and another episode of Gearbox 2.0. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the ups and downs about being self-employed and a freelancer in this industry for over 20 years. So let's get started. All right, so this is going to be an episode that's a little bit different from the normal Gearbox episodes. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of my experience since the mid-90s being self-employed and a freelancer in this industry. Now I'm setting up right now for the end of year episode where I'll be talking about some of my favorite products that I have been using in 2018. And appropriately for this episode, I am standing inside of the barn after using a wet vac and damage control where we have had, and you can probably hear it on my mic right now, continue to have incredibly high winds, torrential downpour. I think about 2 inches came down last night overnight. The whole basketball thing outside went down. I knew that. I had foresight and moved the car. Luckily, it actually went in the other direction, but this is part of what I'm going to talk about. All right, so this is a stream of consciousness, and I'm going to keep this to a relatively decent length of time, but I started out in the industry really knowing that probably from day one that I didn't want to work for a company. I wanted to work with people, but I didn't want to punch a clock every day. And that was sort of something I really decided as a teenager. I also knew that I wanted to be in business and also in the arts. And so that kind of led me down a sort of a path as I was growing up and getting out of school to starting to work for creative companies, and then eventually in 1996 starting my own company. Now at the time I wasn't focused specifically on video production. It was more of a brand focused web development company, but very, very shortly after I started that business, I started to get clients who needed video production services. I had no idea what to do in that area, and over time I became a better producer, and one of the ways I did that is I learned how to use all of this stuff, not necessarily initially because I wanted to become a DP or teach production, but because I have been a teacher for so long, that just sort of kind of happened in a sort of natural way, which I'll get to in a minute. So the downsides to being a self-employed freelancer in this industry, and I do have a company. Number one is it's scary. And if you have family, it's very scary at times. It is a roller coaster ride to be in a self-employed position. Now, I figured out long ago, at least for myself, that I don't think there's such a thing as job security if you're out there in the market. And I've seen that probably more so in the last 5 to 10 years be even truer than when I started to notice it 15 or 20 years ago. But for me, it was the right path to just have my own company and do my own thing. Now, it's not going to be for everybody. Some people need to have that job security, even if it's a false job security, for a period of time. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I just mean the idea that you are working and you are pulling in and getting a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks for a certain amount of money. Hopefully there's some benefits there in terms of health insurance. I fumbled on that because that is like one of the things that is so hard to deal with when you're self-employed in general, is, especially if you have a family, is the enormous cost that you have associated with that, at least in this country. But it's hard, you know. Number two, you know, you don't have anybody else that can share in the responsibility. So if you are self-employed and you have clients, it really stops with you. So you have full responsibility. That's a good and a bad, but it's definitely something that you should be aware of when you are jumping into this arena. And then the third one is there's going to be dry spells. And no matter how good it is at times, and sometimes it can be really good, it can be really bad. And again, I go back to this family thing. If you're single and you have a relatively low cost of living, then it's definitely easier. And in fact, most of us, when we start to go freelance, do that when we are younger, when we are single, and that's the time to jump in and really try it and see if it's for you. But there are going to be times, and there's been two specific times for me, 9/11, post 9/11, and also 2008, where the bottom fell out, and it fell out hard. In fact, more so in 2008, because I had just had my third kid with my wife, and that responsibility, and then for about a period of time, I'd say about 9 months, making about $1,500 US, obviously put us into debt and was an enormous strain, and was also the thing, though, which was the catalyst to starting the C47, because I realized that I wasn't doing projects for clients per se on an everyday basis, and I decided I had to do something every day. So I started the C47, and that's why I started shooting those videos 5 days a week for, well, pretty consistently for about 3 years. So those are some of the negatives. And then the positives. The positives, number one, you are your own boss. You get to create your own schedule. That doesn't mean you work less. That means you work more. But you are hopefully working at something that you love to do. I cannot stress that if you find something that you like to do in your life, and that's probably something that was a seed that you were really interested in as a kid or a teenager, that that's probably the thing that's going to bring you joy the most in terms of your work life. And even with the tremendous stress, which of course carries over into other parts of your life, the fact that I'm my own boss and have the ability to make those decisions is great. You get to choose your clients, and I don't mean that in a picky way, but you'll learn, if you haven't already, that there are some things that are really important when you are self-employed. And for me, one of the number one biggest lessons is that money is the byproduct of what I do. I'm doing what I do because I love it, and I make money as a byproduct to doing something that I love. If money is the motivator, then in this industry at least, you probably should look elsewhere, because it is a roller coaster, and there will be lots of times where it's sink or swim. And it will be a great month, and then it will be a dire, awful month. And it's amazing. I mean, right now, I actually don't know what my next project is. But because I've been doing this for over 20 years, I have found that next project and other projects after that, once you kind of find your lane and what you do come. They don't usually come exactly when you think they are. And I would say that one of the things that you should be prepared for, at least in my experience, is the runway is generally about 3 times longer than you think it is. So just factor that into what you're doing. But it's fantastic. I mean, I get to, wake up every single day and do something different every single day of my life. And that is amazing. And as an educator, which is a small percentage, but seems to be a big percentage of what I do, I get to hopefully share some of my knowledge and information with you as you kind of start out in this industry. Some of you have been in the industry for a while. Some of you are more veteran. And I do genuinely appreciate the fact that you take your time to come here and watch the content that I'm creating, and hopefully get some value out of it, and you learn something that you can apply in what you do in your work. So there you go. Those are just some general thoughts about being self-employed and being a freelancer. One take. So it is what it is. And I have to say that most of all, if you think you have the bug to do this, then go for it. And just get the agreement of everyone around you that you know and love that has something to do with those decisions. And jump in head first and have a plan. And, well, have at least an inkling of a plan and do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get back to setting up for next week's end of year episode for some of the gear that I love. And I'll see you guys next time on Gearbox.